All right, moving on to topic two. This is now a couple of weeks old because we haven't had a Reacts episode for a couple of weeks, sadly. Sam Altman's company, a company he founded, CEO of OpenAI, of course, he founded another company that was called WorldCoin. He did this actually before OpenAI, and it was a crypto play. And it's been recently renamed to just World. And the idea is that they have this kind of facial scanning technology. They will scan your face in this high fidelity, it's kind of like Face ID on steroids. And they will create this hardcore fingerprint of your face. And they call them orbs. These things were sort of hard to find, hard to locate, hard to use. They've released a new generation and they're deploying thousands of these things everywhere. And they're making them, more delightful to use and so on. The message really from their event, they were kind of had an event to announce all of this, was, hey, in a world of AI, verifying human beings is going to be very important. I've said this, I'm sure you said this, Hooman, we've all said this, but it carries a little bit of different weight when Sam Altman says this, right? And he's like, hey guys, we kind of creating a problem here. We need to verify that there's a human in the loop, that there is a human intent, a human present, or perhaps human authorship. He stripped away the word coin from the thing, so it's no longer about crypto. And he's leaning into the AI use case. And I think this is very telling for Sam Altman to be involved with. I think it touches on many of the themes and concerns we've talked about on this show many, many times around the potential for impact to the economy. And we're talking way before Skynet here. It's interesting that Sam Altman is on both sides of this equation. So, Hooman, you saw these announcements, you saw the new orbs, you saw their plans to roll them out into retail spaces all over the country and eventually the world. In fact, I think they're emphasizing the global nature of this. What do you make of World? What do you make of Sam Altman's involvement? And what do you make of this existential problem of verifying humanity moving forward?
So, I was lucky enough to invest in a company called Onfido in the UK. They sold, I think, for $650 million. They'd been working on identity verification. And actually, ironically, one of their largest customers were these crypto exchanges or sets of customers. So when you were going on to an exchange, in order to have some transactions of volume, you would have to use your ID, right? So that was the initial use case. Do I know Chris is Chris? And we need to do it at scale. We want to sign up because the longer it takes me and the more expensive it is to find out who Chris is, that impacts the crypto exchange's onboarding time and consequently how much transactions going on. So that's where I think you saw a huge flurry of this identity verification technology and innovation occur. Crypto actually, ironically, was responsible for that. And there was a pretty large competition and there have been some exits and so on and so forth. Now you take that problem and you think about it. Why is identity verification so critical path in the world of AI? Well, institutions and our ability to collaborate as a society, in my opinion, fundamentally hinge on trust. I need to know that you are you in order to interact. If I don't know who anyone is, and we'll discuss this, I think, more, and also what did you do? Like, is this content from you? Is this content real? Right? But it does start with verifying and originating agents. Let's talk about humans as the first agent. So I think the vision behind it is correct. I think there's going to be a lot of debate though, because this is a very sensitive issue. Like the United States has a huge bias towards privacy. It's nothing compared to the EU. Whereas you look at China, they're doing facial recognition everywhere. From a user experience, it's seamless, right? You can go to the airports and you're just like walking through and so on and so forth. So ultimately, I think we all believe as technologists, there's a possibility and there's a world where I could walk in any store, any airport. Why am I taking out a piece of plastic as my token to say this is me, right? In theory, I shouldn't have to. You should just know it's me. And then there's a set of services and privileges associated with me, right? But who should we trust? Who are we going to let be that service? Now, his point of view, it's evolving originally because it might be like OpenAI and not be so open over time, but was, okay, well, we can't really trust anyone. So let's try a decentralized solution where you own it. In the US, if you've noticed in airports, especially San Francisco, they're starting to take pictures and do face IDs, right? It's like coming. And so I think as a society, we're going to have to, it starts with, again, who you are is, there's a multi-factor way of defining you. There's your image, there's your voice, there's biometrics. And so I think there is a very strong need for someone to help solve this identity problem, but there is also it is very threatening to have a third party own all this as well. Like, do you trust the US government to do it? Do you trust a company to do it? Apple's Face ID, which you mentioned, they take a point of view where, it's your face is securely stored on the enclave, right? Like it's encrypted. They don't store your face in some cloud somewhere, right? And that's why I trust Apple. So they use it. I have my authentication device. So in short, I'm very excited about it, but I think it's super early days. And the reason I think this is a hard problem is not technical anymore. It is, how do you architect a solution where everyone can get the outcome that they want, which is identity verification, without the privacy and power dynamic issues of creating like a tool for an authoritarian whatever regime.
This problem becomes very complicated because it's multi-layered, right? It's not only do I need to verify you are you, you need to verify that your intent is real. So are you actually pressing that button or intending to buy that thing or to transfer the ownership of that house? Is your content real, right? Or is it completely manufactured by LLMs? And then is your expertise real? Because if anybody can ask, an LLM to generate what appears to be expert content, like it's unclear. I don't know, Hooman, are you legit? I have no idea. Or is half your shit generated by LLM? And I can't tell, if your expertise is real or not, right? People are going to be able to replicate podcasts. They are replicating podcasts with, Notebook LM. So this whole thing is entirely redundant at this point. But there are multiple layers of verifying a human being, their identity, their presence, their intent, their content, their expertise. Boy, oh boy, it's a real problem. And we've talked about this idea that even before jobs are disrupted, even before wars and conflict is disrupted, even before the super intelligence takes over and points the guns at us, there is just this very basic thing of we won't know who to trust and what to trust. And there are going to be human beings driving these things. So we talk about alignment with human intent, but it's the humans who have the intent to deceive. So alignment doesn't really solve that problem.
Well, foundationally, the first problem is the tech, right? And it's very basic. Is Chris Chris? And that a reductionist view is that's the hard part. That's not the hard part. It's all of that surrounding stuff. So let's say I know with 100% certainty in the airport, Chris is Chris. But to your point, like what is Chris' intention? If Chris is walking by a store, when and what has to be true for you to authorize that payment? And hey, okay, so I know that's Chris. When is it that Chris took the photo with the iPhone so that I can then attribute that photo with Chris and that time and date and location? Because, look, we're in a very interesting time. And as AI is going up and to the right, the same tools that are arming us to create and collaborate at scales that we never thought before are arming folks to have malicious intent, right? Like I gave you the example when we were talking about my mom. Like if somebody calls my mom and says, hey, it's Hooman, they sample my voice for 30 seconds and they go ahead and say, hey, mom, I need you to wire me money right now. I'm busy. And they go ahead and do it. The only way to prevent that is for to have some sort of verification and say, you know what? This isn't Hooman. It's a critical invention.
It's not just verification, right? In the case of your mom, all our moms, it's verification and some interstitial layer, some UX and some level of not training, but like general understanding that I need to be looking for the green light. Like this is actually Hooman. I mean, to this day, you see posts on whatever, Facebook and whatever, people copying and pasting. Facebook is going to sell your data unless you copy and paste this message and post it.
That's right.
And all these, like I'll say illiterate, not in a pejorative way. They're illiterate about the technology in a genuine way. They still don't know it to this day. So how do you teach, our mums, our cousins to look for the identity verification signal? And then you talked about, this has to be an open protocol. Do we really trust companies to do this? But it's interesting, in the same breath, you said the only company I'm trusting right now is Apple, which is the ultimate walled garden company, right?
I'll amend that slightly. It's not that I only trust Apple. It's that their approach is one that technically they have limited their own access to the data through cryptographic security and pushing an enclave. So I think the design of the system, it gives me trust in the way that they're moving forward necessarily. I don't know if I trust Apple as a whole, right? I mean, I'm not saying I do or don't, but I do trust that particular system. And I think we need to design a system ideally that it's almost like a human being or something like that. Like, hey, you recognized me, great. You can, call up my identity for the purpose of instant verification, but you have to immediately delete that information. And, there's just a lot of things that have to occur,
Let me give you a great case study of this. I was interviewing somebody for a product marketing role. And one of the steps was do some homework around this product marketing problem. And he came to the homework jam session with an incredibly detailed and thoughtful framework for how the product marketing should work. And And it was like textbook and clear and concise and well articulated. I found myself wondering, like, did this guy just ask ChatGPT for a product marketing framework? I have no idea if this is coming from his expertise, his lived experience, or he's just very good at prompting the LLM and then walking us through the answer. And this is what I meant by that last layer, right? Of who you are, your intent, your content, and your experience. I don't know if your experience is real. Now, what will really cook your brain is, does it fucking matter? Does it matter if his experience is real? Maybe it's perfectly fine that he's very good at using AI to quickly get up to speed with something and present a realistic plan of execution. Then you start asking yourself like questions around the things we used to value: experience, memorized knowledge, college training. That shit doesn't matter. What matters is, do you know how to use the tools? In this case, like these days, a lot of prompting, but the emerging tools to quickly get up to speed with any problem at any time. And, at Uber, we used to look for horsepower. This is almost like AI power. Do you know how to use the tools? Doesn't matter what your background is.
I think, though, fundamentally, I'll say the shape of it is similar to the productivity revolution that was introduced through PCs and the unlocks what came out from the internet. So what I mean by that is this: what is a person at work trying to do? Fundamentally, I want to pay the least amount of people to do the most amount of work quickly, right? And so if said person in your example came back and said, hey, I did this all with AI, my first reaction might be, well, if the outcome is good and you can do it at a lower cost. I mean, one of the things we talk about Collective is Instagram sold for $1 billion and there was 13 people, right? And at Collective, we're focusing on solopreneurs. What has to be true for there to be $1 billion business of one? Now, it's a construct. And then I started seeing Sam Altman, by the way, has a very similar thing. Him and his friends have that bet. Let me give you one that's more close that can happen. What's stopping 5 people from building $100 million business? And the answer is that deadly close. But I still think it's the same metrics that you're already looking at. Hey, I want people that can do more with less. Okay, the first generation of them were like, I know how to use computers and I know how to use Office and I know how to use internet and I know to do research and I go faster. This next generation can take it even faster. So I think with their business context will reward them for output. I think that's a great use of AI. Now, the negative part of it is, okay, let's take our malicious actors and we're in election day. So, people are like, all right, I want to influence an outcome on an election or an issue and whatever. And I figured out how to game Facebook. So I'll start organically and I'll create these fake organic video posts. And then I'll do promoted posts and I'll use the marketplace to take whatever content is kind of trending and tip, and the fact remains is without this verification, back to our previous point, I mean, dude, you're fucked. Because if you can't I like the way you're thinking about the green dot, but there's verification systems now, like the blue check mark that's famous on Twitter and so on and so forth.
Well,
if we don't have the equivalent,
the meaning of that blue check mark has completely changed.
It's eroded.
Yes.
Sure. But if there's not some equivalent where people can ascribe some level of trust to, what you're doing is ultimately, if that content is in line with your ideology, it defends your case, you're willing to accept that might be true. And the danger is not actually that people don't, ultimately, there's a lot of good checks and balances now. People are like, you'll find so many of these videos, this has been debunked. It's too fucking late because we have like a 15-minute turn to 15-second economy of information. And so you need to know as it's getting viral that this is fake. And so this verification problem is, to me, one of the biggest issues on the internet. And it's going to get so bad if we don't, as a society, I truly believe Apple, Adobe, anyone who has the ability to originate and create content through video and photos and then also edit them, truly, they need to have a protocol that they all adopt that we can say content is true or false. If we do not do that within the next 5 to 10 years, then the institutions erode, the trust erodes, and then it's basically who's screaming the loudest and who knows how to do that. And that's a dangerous place to live.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically already there, right? It's just that this supercharges it tenfold, 100-fold, right? We're already producing misinformation that we can't verify, we don't understand. There's that old saying that a lie will go halfway around the world before the truth even puts on its pants. I mean, a lie will change the conversation entirely before the truth has a chance to even emerge. Just to go back to that point you raised about the $1 billion company with one person, it's hard to judge providence here, but actually we had Ben Parr on the show with Jeremiah Ouyang, and we were talking, Ben raised this idea of a $1 billion company with 3 people. And Jeremiah posted that on LinkedIn and it went viral. We had he had 1 million views. And then we started hearing Sam Altman talk about it. And this is not like outside the realm of possibility.
We need to go do some research so we can figure out who's the first to it.
Yeah, I'm sure many people had this idea at the same time independently. But it was interesting because we talked about it very early on and it went very, very viral. And we've heard a lot of people talk about it since. My hypothesis is that we'll have like an executive team. So, a marketer, a financial officer or whatever, and then they're just using their whole team. It's LLMs and agents. Look, it's a fascinating, fascinating problem. Verification is definitely in the mix, if not the silver bullet to solve it, along with a few other bits and pieces. And so I think it's very telling. The takeaway here for founders, for operators, for investors, for people who care about the world is, Sam Altman has a view of the future. He's in the lab. He knows what's coming. He knows what's possible. He's telling us through his behavior, his investments, and his associations that this is a serious problem. I would say threat. And he's betting on solving it. And I think a number of other smart people are betting on solving it. And we better be paying attention to it. And there is a closed version of this. There's an open version of this. There's a fragmented version of this. There's a unified version of this. And it's going to be a lot of pain until we get to the bottom of it.
I agree. And I think I'll say something, maybe it's radical, maybe it's obvious, but people talk a lot about the threat of AI. And I think there's a lot of fear mongering. I'm an optimist. I actually think that there's a lot of positive ways that we can move society forward. It's an inevitability that AI is going to come. You can debate AGI, you can debate all this stuff, but AI is going to be more and more commonplace. It's going to integrate everything we're doing. So there's people saying we're going to be out of jobs and all that. To me, the social unrest, the threat to the social fabric of AI is the number one threat that we need to attack as a group. And it's solvable. I say this with optimism, but if we don't just acknowledge that the cost of content creation is dropping to zero and the quality of said content is going to the highest fidelity possible, and that can create, again, distrust, we need to address that problem first and foremost, in my opinion. If we do not do that, the problem is we'll be killing each other before AI comes to kill us, right? And so we need to be able to have to solve all problems. The requirement is we have to have institutions, trust, and communication. We can't do that if we don't know what's right. That to me is a big problem. Hopefully we'll solve it as a society. I think we will, but I do think it's going to come from these ironically big companies instituting some of these standards. Good news, bad news. It's not that many companies left. I mean, talking about 10 companies get together, they can probably fix it.
All right. Well, what do you guys think? Are we going to kill ourselves before AI has a chance to kill us? We didn't really discuss this, but do you trust Sam Altman to be the one to try to solve this problem and kind of be on both sides of the equation? Is Apple, as a private company that's prioritizing privacy, the one that's going to do it? Is it open protocols? Where do you see this question of verification of identity, verification of intent, verification of expertise? Where is that going? Does it even matter if someone doesn't have that expertise? Join us in the comments. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll join you down there as well.